Joining us now, live and exclusive on India Today, is Mr. Ehud Olmert, a former Prime Minister of Israel, served as the leader of the country from 2006 to 2009, was in fact in charge of governing Israel at the time of the 22-day war on Gaza in late 2008. Mr. Olmert, welcome to India Today. You're joining us at a time when the world's eyes are on Israel. So much sympathy in India and elsewhere with the people of Israel on the back of this barbaric attack by the Hamas. Could I start by getting you to explain your sense of the current state of play in Israel, the counter-offensive being mobilized by the Israeli Defense Forces? It seems as if Israel is getting set for a ground invasion of the Gaza Strip. You were in charge of the country when the war with Gaza happened in 2008. Could you give us a sense of how this confrontation is shaping up from your perspective, sir?
Well, first of all, I have to say, to make it very clear and particularly, it's very important for me that the public opinion in your great country, India, will understand it. We are not set out to invade the Gaza district. We don't want to invade, we don't want to occupy. We want to reach out to the terrorists that perpetrated the mass killing of Israeli citizens in the last few days in the most brutal and inhuman manner. You know, more than 1,200 Israeli citizens were butchered and murdered. Babies, 2 years old, 3 years old, the mothers were raped in front of the children, and then they got a bullet in the head and they were massacred with their parents and with their grandparents. So this is not something that any country can tolerate, and Israel set out to reach out for those who did it and to take the necessary measures in order to make sure that it will never be repeated again. But we don't have a war against those who are not involved. The innocent Israeli citizens were victims of terror and of brutality, and I certainly don't want any non-involved in Gaza to have to go through the suffering of war for something that they were not part of. One thing I can guarantee you, no Israeli will do anything similar to what these Palestinians, radicals, extremists, fundamentalists, ISIS-type people did to our citizens.
Mr. Olmert, given the fearsome capabilities of the Shin Bet, the domestic intelligence agency, the Mossad, the external intelligence agency of Israel, where do you think the government of Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu went wrong in not being able to join the dots? A lot of the training seemed to be happening in daylight, quite clearly visible to CCTV cameras, I'm sure, to your ground human intelligence assets, to technical surveillance assets. How did the world's most sophisticated intelligence apparatus, in your view, miss all these signs?
Well, I'll tell you, there are two things, independent, separate, but both have contributed to what we have seen now. One thing is that when Netanyahu became Prime Minister, he announced that his foremost priority is to destroy Hamas. Unlike me, in comparison to me, he said, I didn't destroy Hamas, he will destroy Hamas, with a very strong hand attitude towards the Hamas. In reality, he actually did the opposite. The choice that he had was to negotiate with the Palestinian Authority and with the president of the Palestinian Authority, Mahmoud Abbas, towards a political solution of the Palestinian issue on the basis of a two-state solution, or to reduce the impact and the influence and the importance and the centrality of the Palestinian Authority. And the only way to do it was to promote Hamas. So the same organization that he swore to destroy, he actually promoted. And that has created and a lot of expansion in the military strengths of Hamas, and he allowed hundreds of millions of dollars that came from Qatar to finance the Hamas, and that opened up also options for Iran to play a much greater role than they should have been allowed to play in promoting the status of Hamas. So this is one thing. The other thing is a question about the failure, or the appearance of failure, of one of the most sophisticated intelligence systems there are, which is the Israeli system. Israeli military intelligence, Israeli secret service, which are known to be really one of the best in the world. The truth is that we knew all the details. We saw everything. We saw all the preparations. Nothing was hidden from our eyes and the eyes of the very sophisticated cyber system that we have developed in Israel. We just were arrogant to believe that they can do it. So we saw all the preparations, and yet we said, they are not going to do it. I mean, this is just practice, this is just fooling out. They are not being able to accomplish what we see that they are training to do. And therefore, even in the last couple of days before the operation, we pulled out a military division from Gaza, from the nearby Gaza, and moved it into another area. And we have actually emptied all of the area from a major, robust military presence, which was based not on not knowing all the details of all kinds of preparations, but of the arrogance that we believe that no one will dare do what they seem to have prepared to do. But they did it, and we were caught in surprise.
There's been some talk about a unity government of the more moderate factions in Israel coming together with the right-wing government of Benjamin Netanyahu. Do you see that, Mr. Olmert, as being a possibility, that a cross-party unity coalition government getting together in this hour of crisis in Israel?
Well, I have my doubts about it. I think that when it comes to the military operations will take place according to the military plans, to the plans of the commanding generals of the Israeli army, and regardless of whether there is a unity government or not. So I'm not certain that that will make a difference. On the other hand, the present government of Netanyahu is made up of some very extremist right-wing messianic elements which have a strategic goal of eventually annexing all of the Palestinian territories and getting rid of the Palestinians or expelling them. This is something which is totally intolerable, unacceptable, and will never be supported by any part, a major part of the Israeli population. And the question is whether the more moderate elements in Israeli politics, which are now in opposition, want to be part of a government with these elements of messianic groups that are, I think, are not going to be not helpful and not supportive to achieve the national goals, which must be the priority of our country.
Now, when you were Prime Minister, Mr. Olmert, you took on the Hamas at the Gaza Strip, and yet Israel decided that Gaza was ungovernable, pulled back, elections were held, the Hamas won. You can raise all the buildings you want. What do you think will be the end of the road for the Hamas? Because with all the attacks of the past, Israel hasn't been able to finish off the Hamas. Do you think this time that is possible, or do you think ultimately you will have to negotiate, you will have to work towards a two-state solution, because without that, this problem will keep popping its head up in some fashion or the other?
There is always a danger that this problem will continue to be part of our agenda and part of our lives, and we have experienced not only in our part of the world, but in other parts of the world, that sometimes these kinds of conflicts last longer than they should. And so this is one danger. On the other hand, by the way, when I was Prime Minister, there were elections in the territories, and Hamas was very successful in these elections because of the radical anti-Israeli, anti-Jewish attitude, which has characterized them from day one. They never wanted to make peace with Israel. They never wanted to negotiate politically with the state of Israel. They wanted to fight Israel. But I think as a result of the operations in the end of 2008 and the beginning of 2009, at the time that I was in charge, the conflict has been reduced to an entirely different scale. A scale which has lasted for almost 15 years. There were occasional confrontations, but nothing of the nature of what we have witnessed in the last few days. So while all these occasional confrontations between us and the Palestinians in Gaza were not always pleasant, and that it required occasionally to take severe measures against them, it was tolerable and manageable. What we were not prepared for and didn't address ourselves in time for the threats that were coming from Gaza to deal with it was the kind of military aggressive brutal operation that they perpetrated Saturday. So I think that Saturday, for the first time, they have changed the scale, the level, and the intensity of this conflict. And now it remains to be seen what will be the impact of the counter-offensive of Israel. I want to say two things, and it's very, very important for me that people in India will understand it and will sympathize with it. We are going to be very aggressive. We are going to go every place in Gaza and look out for the terrorists and do what needs to be done in order to deal with terrorists. We'll do every possible effort in order to avoid any unnecessary confrontations with non-involved in the civilian society. And we expect that the international public opinion, definitely the public opinion of Indians, and there are many Muslims living in India, and I appeal to them as well, they will understand that if sometimes the pictures that they will see from Gaza will not be pleasant, this is an unavoidable, inevitable result of the need to get rid of the terrorists in order to change the quality of life for both Palestinians and Israelis in that part of the world for a long time.
Okay. Do you see this conflict escalating? We're already seeing the Hezbollah engage in some skirmishes with the Israel Defense Forces. There's talk of the potential support from Iran. Do you think beyond the Hamas, this could extend to Israel getting into conflict with the Hezbollah and possibly with their backers, Syria, possibly Iran? Do you see that? Do you see that as a major concern, sir?
There is certainly danger it will happen. I hope it won't. It must be clear, Iran is behind Hezbollah, Iran is behind Hamas. The Hamas would never been able to do what they did without the support and the financial support, the professional military support, and also the equipment that the Iranians provide them with. And the same is for Hezbollah. So Iran is behind it, and the Iranians want to try and fight against Israel through Hamas and through Hezbollah. Therefore, there is a certain likelihood that it will expand also to the north. However, I want to remind what the leader of Hezbollah said after 2006, when he attacked Israel, and I then was in charge as the prime minister, and we counterattacked Hezbollah. Then the leader of Hezbollah, Sheikh Nasrallah, said that had he anticipated a 1% of the Israeli counteroffensive in the first place, he wouldn't have started this whole operation. So I warn him now, before he joins in with Hamas, that he should remember what he said 16 years ago, because the Israeli reaction will be devastating, will be terrible for Hezbollah, and I'm not sure that he wants to go through this experience again. We don't want to fight against Hezbollah. We don't want to have another front in the north. We don't want to fight with Hamas, but they left us with no choice. So we have to now respond to the challenge of Hamas. I hope we will not be forced by Hezbollah to do the same in the north.
For sharing your thoughts on the future of this conflict and also the lapses that led to this Hamas attack, Ehud Olmert, thank you very much for joining us. That's the former Prime Minister of Israel, a man who has led the country in a battle against the Hamas, talking about the challenges at hand now and about the level of aggression that we're likely to see from Israel as they go all out to finish the Hamas once and for all. Ehud Olmert, for joining us on India Today. Thank you, sir.
Thank you very much.